Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Taylor. I'm the Technical Marketing Manager for Civil Service Solutions, and I'm based in Sydney. And welcome to the AutoCAD Blocks and Attributes 101 Technical Webcast. And for those of you that didn't attend the AutoCAD Tips and Tricks webcast that we did last month, or Selwyn did last month, this is the result of a poll that we undertook at the end of that particular webcast to determine what we should do next. And by popular demand, this was the resulting webcast. Selwyn, are you there?
Yes, I am, Jonathan.
So Selwyn is our application engineer and CAD guru. He's based in Melbourne. Got an extensive background in CAD management. And for those of you that have seen his now what is fast becoming his own personal playlist of webcasts, all related to AutoCAD-based topics, such as this one, you'll know that he's got a lot of great things to be able to share. Stay tuned at the end. We are probably going to move on to a July webcast. I can't believe we're in July already, nearly. A July webcast, which will be dynamic blocks. It would seem to be a very good segue from this particular webcast, so we will just mention that towards the end. But on that, Selwyn, I might just hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Yes, I'm ready to go. We're going to have a look at blocks and attributes. Fairly basic outline of blocks and attributes. We'll be looking at creating a simple symbology block. So, you know, like for a TBM or something like that, I've got a TBM ready to be created into a block. And I'll show you about the different ways that annotation, the scaling and things can be altered within that to suit your symbology. But we'll just move on to our first page. So a block is a group of objects that can be combined into one single named object in a drawing. When you're using lines and arcs and things in a drawing and you're going to replicate them, say for a tree or something like that through your drawing, each line and arc or whatever's included in your tree or whatever group of objects you're copying around will be duplicated multiple times through your drawing. So if your object that you're moving around has 10 objects and it's not a block, if you copy it 10 times within your drawing, you'll have 100 objects. Whereas with a block, you could have those 10 objects merged into the one block name. And then when you copy that block around, that block has 10 objects in it. But when you paste it or copy it into your drawing another 9 times, so there's 10 copies, you'll only have the single block. The block table will store the data that's in the block table. And when you insert a block, you'll be inserting single instances of the block. So what was 10 items originally, you've now got those 10 items in the drawing, but they're a named object and they become a block. When you copy that block around, you're only creating a single instance of that block reference through your drawing. You're not duplicating those 10 objects multiple times. So I'll show you the significance of file size when we come to creating a block and not creating a block a little further into the session. Blocks are ideal for symbology. Scalable blocks are ideal. You might have a water main and you've got your stop valves and things like that, and you've got different layout scales. You might want that symbol to be the same size in your layouts, so you can make the block annotative, so it scales up and down depending upon your drawing scales. And as I lightly covered before, reusable objects. So we've created a block that's got multiple objects in it. When you copy it around in your drawing, you'll have that single reference. You can also export it out to a single file, or you can use that block and reference it from the source drawing into your current drawing if it's in a different drawing. But we'll have a look at those options a little bit later. And if you do write your blocks out to a block library or something like that, those blocks then become available to insert into your other projects. So your company may have a group or a library of block objects that they've provided for the company, and it will probably consist of trees and different symbology and things like that. Some blocks will come in full scale, some blocks will be scalable, but that will all be set up by your company. A little bit more advanced with blocks, still fairly basic sort of stuff, is a thing that we call attributes. Attributes are labels within a block, ideal for title blocks and things like that, or room layouts where you need to have, you know, who belongs to the room and things like that. So we've got a block, the same block gets inserted into the drawing multiple times. However, we're able to modify the text entries or the labels within that block, and you can actually export that information as well. We can create a block in a drawing, and we might find that we've created it with very, very simple symbology, just for the speed of the drawing to make it regenerate faster or something like that. You can actually go in and redefine a block and make the block more complex or simplify it even further. So you're not stuck with a block being created in your drawing and it's fixed as that particular block with the content that's in it. You can modify the blocks at any time. So we're going to have a look at, when we're creating blocks, we're going to have a look at these different aspects. We'll have a look at what the color by block means when we're working with blocks. You've probably noticed in the layer list, you've got by layer, you've got by block, and you've got all the other colors 1 through to 256, and you've got your true type colors and things like that. The by block layer, if any objects on that and you change the color of the objects in your drawing that have by block layer set will take on the values that you set independently for the block. We'll be seeing how that works when we're creating blocks a little bit later. And therefore, the importance of layers. When you insert a block, if it's created on layer 0, all items in the block that have been created on layer 0 and the block gets inserted on layer text, the block will take on all the qualities of the layer text. So if your layer text is set to red, continuous line type, you know, different other settings, if you insert that block on that layer with those settings, it will take on the qualities and the properties of that layer if the objects are created on layer 0. We'll look at creating blocks, editing blocks using the block editor. We'll look at editing a block in place. There's multiple options to do that. Then we're going to have a look at attributes and the different values and things that we can use for attributes when we're creating those. We'll look at using blocks as symbology, and then finally we'll look at importing, exporting, and redefining blocks. So to get on with it, I've got a simple drawing here. This is a tree. It's only line work at the moment, so if I select it, we'll see that it's got 119 objects in it. We've got tree.dwg here, and it's 41 kilobytes at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the contents of the tree. So I'll copy that, and I'm going to put it in multiple places. I'll do 9 copies of it. So there's 10 objects in total on screen. I'm going to save this drawing. If you recall, the drawing size was 41 kilobytes. I'll save that drawing. And now we'll see that the drawing is 89 kilobytes. So the extra 9 copies of that, the line work in the drawing has added, or almost double the size of our drawing, or just over double the size of our drawing. I'll go back into here now. I'll undo, I'll get rid of those that I've created, and I'm going to create a simple block. You'll find that all the block tools are located on the home panel, and we've got this panel here. Sorry, I just clicked the wrong button. And we've also got the insert panel here, and this has the entries that we'll be using for our block tutorial today. So what I'm going to do is create a simple block. Go to create block, and we'll get this window here. What this window signifies is we're wanting to name the block. I'm going to call it tree. Case doesn't really matter for what I'm doing here. Specify on screen for the base point. So I'll pick roughly the center of the circle here for the base point. I'll select the objects on screen, and I won't set annotative. However, scale uniformly. That means that when the X and Y scales change, the block itself will stay in shape. So it'll be uniformly scaled up and down. We also have a button here that says allow exploding. If that's checked, when we create the block, we're able to explode the block. If this is unchecked, the block will stay as a block even if you try and use the explode command. We'll step back to annotative. As I said earlier in the introduction, you can create a block that's annotative, like for a TBM or something like that. So you want the symbology to be the same scale or same size, no matter what the drawing scale is. We would check on annotative to allow scaling. However, with a tree, they usually go in at the scale that you specify based on your canopy and your trunk. So we'll leave annotative unchecked. Units, I'll just set it to meters. It should have been set in meters. I've just grabbed this drawing and basically loaded a symbol into it. So we've got all these, we've got our name. The name is what we were after, and we're going to specify all these other settings on screen. So I'll click OK. Down here, it's asking us for the insertion point. So I'll go to the center of the circle. So I've missed that, pick it again. So I've got the center and now select the objects. So we've got one block in here, one object. If I copy this around, I'll copy it 9 times like I did with the other. And now we'll have a look in Explorer again. If you recall, when we copied the line work rather than as a block, it was 89K. Now I'll save this drawing again. And you'll see now that because we're using blocks, we've gone from 89K back to 41K for the size of the drawing. So what that signifies is we have that original block that was created from all the line work, and we've created instances of that block through the drawing. So that's a single object, and these are all single objects, and therefore the sizing of the block, sorry, of the drawing signifies the use of blocks. So if you've got really complex drawings that has a lot of repetitive objects in it, convert them into blocks. It's an easy task to do, and you'll find that your load times and things will be a bit faster because only it's interrogating the insert table in the drawing database, and it's just grabbing the block reference from there and duplicating it through. Okay. So that was a simple block. We're going to head over to another drawing I have open, which is road. In here, I've created a simple line work or a simple TBM, which has got a piece of text, and it's also got the line work that we're going to be using for the TBM. I've put both of these onto the layer TBM. However, I'm going to select the text. I'll go to the Home tab, and I'm going to change the color to by block. It will turn white. That's normal. So now I'm going to create a block. You can type block at the command line to create a block. You can go to the Insert tab, create block, Home, and you've got create block here also. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to type block. I'm going to call this one TBM. Specify on screen for both of these. I'll leave these to defaults. I'll leave them as the defaults. Okay. And I'm going to choose insert pointer there. and those objects. So that now becomes a block. If I change my scale, that block will stay as it is. So there's no scaling in that at all. So normally, like with the TBM, you probably want it to change scale as you change scales in your drawing. So I'm going to edit this block. There is a tool in here that is block editor. However, if you double click on a block, it will bring up the block editor as well. If you recall, I set TBM to be by block, the layer to be by block. So I've got this on layer TBM. I can come in, I can change the color of the color. I clicked on the wrong one there. And if I go to a different color, the color that was set to by block will take on the properties of whatever you choose it to be by setting the layer. Same thing happens with your line type and with your match properties. Sorry, not your match properties, your line type. You've got the by block option in there, and your line weight, you have by block option in there. So we can modify those settings within our drawing. Okay, so we'll go back in here and I'm going to edit this block. Click OK. And now we're in the block editor. We'll have a little bit more of a look in the block editor a little bit later. However, we'll see over here, we have the option here of allow exploding, and we've also got annotative. So if I change that to annotative, close the drawing, save changes, we've now got our TBM in here, and you'll see it's got that little star picket. That means it's annotative. So if I copy this over here now, say there's a TBM in here, when I change my drawing scale, I'll go from 1000 to 2000, continue looking here, and you'll see that the TBM will change scale based on our drawing scale. So that's as easy as it is to get a block to change scale based on your drawing scale. So that's handy for symbology. Like a TBM is generally a symbol in your survey plan if you're working with survey plans, and you probably want them at the same scale no matter what. So no matter what your drawing scale is, so you can make a block annotative. If I explode this block and I go back in and I create a block again, I'll give this one a different name. And we could have gone in here and we could have clicked on annotative initially. Okay, pick our base point, pick our objects, and you'll see that that's an annotative block. And if we look at the name of it, it is, where's the name? Down here, TBM1. So that's the one that we just created.
Selwyn.
Yes.
Just very quickly, this is more of a plug for a previous or historical webcast, guys. If you want to know more about annotative objects, because obviously Selwyn's covering this as part of another webcast, there was a webcast that was done 6 months ago now that's on our YouTube channel, which is basically Annotative Objects 101. So Selwyn does go into the annotative stuff in a lot more depth, just for reference. Thanks, Selwyn.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, I wasn't going to go into depth with the annotative side of things, but you can make symbology that is scalable. Okay. Right, we'll have a look at another drawing here. You'll see in here I have a door. It's just a rectangle and an arc. Both of the objects are on layer 0. That's fine for what we're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these objects. I'm going to type block. So I'm selecting the objects prior to selecting. And I'll call this one door 1. Okay, base point. And you'll see that it's created a block. And as my current layer was door, it's put on layer door. If I send it back to layer 0, it'll take on the qualities of layer 0. But I'll put it back onto door. And now we can just copy this around or reinsert. Just type I for insert, and you'll see there's door 1, and we can just bring it over and drop it where we want it. We can repeat placement, door 1, and place it wherever we like in our drawing. You can type I for insert, and that brings up that window. Blocks can be scaled X and Y. So if I wanted to go in reverse, I could go, hold on, scale. Oh no, it's uniformly scaled, so I can't change any of those. If I go -1, you'll see that it rotates. However, we can just use our normal grips and, you know, rotate, scale, mirror, stretch, all that sort of stuff. Works on the block, but as you see, it gets the whole, all entities that are within that block. And I might find, I'll actually undo, I'll put that back where it was. We might find that the door is not how we want it. So if I double click on door, I'll bring up the block editor again. Because I double clicked on the door 1, it comes up with door 1 by default. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a layer called swing. So -LA, new, swing. You can create it using the layer manager. It's entirely up to you, but I've got the layer swing. I'll click on color. I'm going to change the color of that one to green. Okay, and I'll put that one on the layer swing. So we've got our door, which is still on layer 0, and we've got our swing, or the door swing, on the layer swing, and it's colored green. So close block editor, save changes, and you'll see that all our doors have updated. So we don't have to go through and modify this swing on this door, you know, when it's single objects. We can go through and modify a block, and you can change it in any way that you want. So now if I change this one to a different layer, I'll put on mullion, you'll see that the door has taken on the qualities of the layer mullion because it was created on layer 0. However, the swing still retains the qualities and the properties that were set for the layer swing. So anything that's created on layer 0, I'll just do a little, so that's on door. I'll go to layer 0. I'll create another rectangle. And I'll create another rectangle. This one I'm going to change to by block. I'll also change the line type to by block. And I'm going to create a block out of these 3 objects. So this one is a polyline on the layer door, and it's set to color by layer. This one here is on a layer 0. So whatever layer the block gets inserted on will take on the properties of that layer. And this rectangle here is set to block by block. So if I change the color of the block, this line, this rectangle here will take on the color that I changed the block to. So I'll create a block. Let's go back, home, create block, and I'll call it test. I'll specify on screen, put the insertion point up there. Doesn't really matter for what we're doing here. So This rectangle's on layer 0. If I change the layer for our block, I'll put it onto layer millwork. You'll see that the by block color has taken on the qualities of the layer millwork, and the one that was set to layer 0 has taken on the values and the properties of the layer millwork. Now, if I select the block and I change its color, the rectangle that was set to by block will change color. So you might find that you might have text in a block that you want to be on a certain color or a certain line weight, but it may vary. You can go through and you can change the layers and the colors of those. So I'm going to change the color of the block. So I'm changing the whole block to color green. However, with this one being created on the layer furniture, or whatever it was, I can't remember what layer it was, it retains those qualities. This one, because the block has been inserted on the layer millwork, takes on the color and line type and everything of millwork, whereas this part of the block was created with the color by block and also the line type of by block. So if I change, I can change the line type of it's actually doing the whole block, but visually it only changes the entity that has been set to by block. Okay, another thing with blocks, I'm just going to create another rectangle. Sorry if I could spell. And I'm going to put a piece of text above it. I'll just specify text heights and stuff like that. I'll just call it label. This one, I'll make annotative. And now I'm going to make a block. There was no annotative scaling set to the actual rectangle, so I'll create another block. I'll call this one test 2. Specify on screen for these ones. I'll leave annotative unchecked. Pick the base point down here and the objects. And you'll see that it's a block. So I'll copy it around. So label and everything should follow through. I'll change my drawing scale. And you'll see that the block itself doesn't change scale because when we created the block, we didn't set the block to be annotative. If we set the block to be annotative, both the symbology and the label would scale. However, when I created it, I'll just explode if possible. No, I can't. The text itself was annotative, so the text will scale up and down, and the symbology itself will stay at the same scale as it was originally set. If you are using text with your blocks, be cautious of the insertion point. My insertion point on this one here was bottom left. If I'll double click and I'll edit the block. I'm going to change the insertion point off here and I'll make that mid-center. Justify. Mid-center. And I'll move that out of the way. Close block editor, save. And now when I change scales, you'll see that it will start overlapping and making a pretty big mess of our drawing. We should be able to just use mid-center, position the text. If you're going above the line, do it at bottom center, top center, middle left, or whatever, just so it doesn't overlap the block when you change the scaling. So that's basic blocks with text and annotation, the ability to scale your blocks. So we'll move on to a title block and we'll look at attributes. Actually, before we look at attributes, we'll come back here and we'll look at attributes in here with creating another block. So there's a block. That's a block, and that one's called sofa. I should use. Actually, this has got nothing in it. So we're going to add some information to this, and we're going to turn it into a table. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Insert tab. Under Block Definition, there's a button that says Define Attributes. Attributes are the labels that are able to be modified by the user when you insert your block. So I'm going to click on Define Attributes, and we come up with this panel here. We'll start with the highlighted attribute entries over here. Tag is what your attribute will be called. Tags cannot contain spaces. If you put a space in, AutoCAD puts an underscore to signify where the space is. So always ensure that your tags, doesn't matter if it's upper or lowercase, AutoCAD will change it to uppercase. And I'm going to call this table, actually I'll call it coffee table. I'll call it 1 just in case there's one in there. Hold on, coffee table size, I'll call it. Prompt is when you're inserting the block, you'll get a prompt on the command line or on screen asking what the attribute will be. So I'm going to put enter size of table, and I can set the default size in here. So when I insert the block, it'll come in with a default. So I'll go 1000 by 1000 by 500. We're going to get them to line up from this corner downwards. So I'll go left, the style I'll leave as standard. I don't want the text to scale up or down. I just want it to stay the same size. However, as we looked at the block before, you can make the text annotative, so it will scale up and down depending upon your drawing scale. Text height, I'll set it to something reasonable. I'll go 2.5, and rotation of 0. So it'll just be horizontal in our drawing. The interesting stuff is the mode over here. There's multiple modes. Invisible is when you insert a block and it's got attributes and the attribute is set to invisible, it will not display on screen. There is a workaround for that, and I'll show you that in a moment. Constant is for a label that doesn't change. So it will be consistently the same label all the time. Verify, if that's checked, when you insert the block, it will ask you to verify the size that's entered. So it's going to default to that, but it will ask to verify that that's the scale you want. Preset is when you have an entry and you want a default to come in and it doesn't actually come into your drawing. It's a preset example of what you're after. Lock position signifies that once the attributes are placed in our block, they're unable to be moved. You may find that, like with a title block, you might want to move text, the labeling around. So that's your choice whether you do that in there. We'll have a look at some of that a little bit later when we go into looking at a title block. And multiple lines. And a attribute can have multiple lines. Say you might have a title block and it's got a road description. It might be Western Port Highway, and it might be changes. So you can make them all into the one attribute and it will put it on different lines for you. Insertion point, same as what we were looking at with the blocks. So I'll specify on screen. I'm okay where I am at the moment, so I'll click on OK. Sorry, I'll click on Verify, just so it questions it when it comes in, and I'll enter that here. you'll see that the label that it has is the same as what I set as the tag. So I'm going to create another attribute. And now, because I've already just put a attribute in, there's an option here to align below previous attribute definition. So I'm going to get it to go directly underneath that tag. This one, we'll call it, I'll call it coffee table once more, and I'll set this one as owner. Sorry about the capital H there. Default, I'll leave as blank. You'll also see over here, there's the option to insert fields into our attributes as well. So you can come in here and select any of the fields and they'll come into an attribute as a default. We won't be looking at fields in this session. We had a look at fields with the Sheet Set Manager, which was a different session. So if you want to have a look at fields, and there's possibly a session that'll be on fields a bit further down the track. Okay, so we've got a line below previous attribute definition checked, so therefore insertion point becomes unchecked, and it's going to duplicate the entries of the coffee table size entry. So okay, and you'll see it's gone in just below. So that'll do. Oh, sorry, I mistyped that one, but that won't matter for the time being, but we'll fix it anyway. Okay, so I'm going to convert this area here, these three objects, into a block. So I'll go over here, create block. I'll call it coffee table 1. Specify on screen, specify on screen. Don't want it to be annotative, and we want it to maintain its size. Actually, we'll uncheck that one. And we'll go OK. Set the base point of, we'll go for that corner there, and we'll choose our 3 objects. Okay, so it's converted it into a block. It's put in the default of 1000 by 500, which is what I put in as the preset. And we'll say this is in Mavis's office. If you recall, this tab or this tag was set to invisible. So I click on OK. Did I set it as invisible? Sorry guys, I'm just going to have a look at that one. Let's bring up block editor. Sorry. Invisible. Sorry, I thought I checked on invisible. Close block editor. And then you'll see, because we've got attributes in our drawing, we need to come back to the Insert tab and click on Synchronize. It's asking us to select a block. So I'll press Enter, select that block. And you now see that it's updated. That attribute is invisible. So if you go into Block Editor with a block that has attributes, ensure that you use the command synchronize, or at the command line, it's ATTSYNC, @sync, and the attributes will update. If I double click on this block now, it will bring up the attribute editor. You'll see that we've got Mavis's office here, and it's not shown because it was set as invisible. However, because it's invisible, there's a system variable called @disp, ATTDISP. If we turn that on, we get all the attributes that are in our drawing. If we set it back to normal, our invisible attributes will disappear. So you
So,
might have,
oh,
yeah, go on.
sorry, just wanted to capture it whilst you were just talking about the sync. The question is, will the attributes sync if you were to close and then reopen the drawing?
Yes.
They will. Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, because the block definition has been updated in the database. However, the visual drawing editor hasn't been updated.
Great. Thank you.
So the definition is in the background, and when you reopen your drawing, the blocks will all take on the qualities of what's in the table in the drawing.
Thank you.
Okay. So at DISP, we'll turn the display of all your attributes on. So the invisible ones, like you might have catalog numbers, you might have some sort of specific things that you don't actually need to display on your drawing, but you need that information in your drawing. Okay. No more questions on that one, Jonathan?
No, I was going to mention something about the order of attributes, but it's possible that you might be covering that, particularly with the title block. So I'll maybe mention that towards the end.
That's all right. Yep, that's with manage attributes up here.
Yeah, no problem. You're already there. Perfect. Yeah. All good.
But yeah, we'll have a look in the title block, because I'm going to move on to the title block now, or onto a title block. Here's one I prepared earlier that has no content in it at all. Okay, it's just a plain title block. I'm just going to populate this area here with some attributes. So define attribute. I'll call this one road name. Notice I've put a space in there. Sorry about the capitalization, but it's just quicker if I just type at the moment. I won't set a default. Justification, I'll do it center, because I want it to be centered through here. Text style, I can choose whichever one. I'll go for one of these ones. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. We won't have annotative on, because the title block will always be inserted at 1-to-1. And I'll uncheck lock position, because sometimes with the title block you might find that you need to move something around or change it. So it's a good idea to have lock position off, unless you're fairly confident it's going to stay where it is. So I'll go 5 high for that. Okay. So as you see here, no spaces. So I just come back up here and I'll just put an underscore in there, or just turn it into one word. So I'm going to place that here. I'll take it back over to roughly the center of the window. If I can, I'll turn O-snaps off temporarily. Okay, I'll get there eventually. So that's a bit big. I'll just take it down a bit smaller. I'll just go 3.5. I forgot it's an A3 drawing. So I'll turn our snaps off. I'll go shift just to move it straight up. I'm going to copy that one down, F8, straight down, and I'm just going to double click on this entry. So I've got the same tab, tag, and everything. However, when you're dealing with the tags, ensure that you have different tag names. When you're exporting the data to a spreadsheet or something like that, if they've got the same tag names, the data won't export as you would expect. So I'm going to change this one to road chainage. Enter chainage range. No default. I'll take that one down to 2.5 high. Move it up ever so slightly. And I'm going to copy this one again. And we'll call this one plan type. Okay. Now we're going to put some in here. Define attributes. I'll go middle center. I'll go 3.5. And tag can't be empty. Revision. And let's call it revision 0. So it's going to come in as default, and I'll place it there. So if we have a look at that, the insertion point's just there. You'll see that it overlaps. When we create a block, that will just become a blank entry. We can also, I won't bother with these ones here, it's just the same process. However, I'm going to create another attribute, and I'll just call it drawing name, and this one we'll just use a field. We'll go document, file name only. We want the file extension, and we want it to show as uppercase. Okay, so it's just called Office Drawing. Okay, and we'll come over here and we'll put that over here at file. I'll change its size. I'll go 2.5 for that one. So we've got 5 attributes in our drawing. We've got a title block. I'm just going to explode that. Okay, so that should be just line work. So now we've just got line work in our drawing, and we've got these attributes in here. So what I'm going to do is create a title block, excuse me, or another block. So back to the Insert tab, create block, and I'm going to call this title block. Base point I'll specify on screen. Objects I'll select. Annotated off, scale uniformly will be turned on, and we don't want it to be able to be exploded. So, okay. I'll set the insertion point of down here. We've just lost our symbol in there, and we'll select our objects. Okay, so it's been converted into a block, and it's come up with defaults. You'll see here, this has come through as a field. So you can have any number of fields, except if you look at here, ideally we want to change the order of our entries. I'm just going to put some, I'll just put type in there, I'll put chainage, and I'll put name in here, just so we can see them on screen. So we want to go through our attribute editor. When we double click, rather than going plan type, road chainage, road name, and through, we want to have name first, then chainage, then type, then we'll put the issue number or revision number, then we'll put the drawing name. Because it makes sense to have them in sequence. When you create a block, you'll see that the sequence that we have in here is the order that they were created from the bottom upwards. So the list is reversed. And that's not acceptable for what we're wanting. We want to make it as easy as we can for the user. So we'll go OK here. And back on the Insert tab, we'll go to Manage Attributes. All right. Manage Attributes. Select block. We'll select that one, and you'll see that we've got the attributes here. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight road name. We're going to move it up to the top. Change as the second entry. Plan type as the third entry. Revision number as the fourth entry, and then drawing number as last. So when I click on OK on this, you'll notice nothing on screen changes. However, when we double click on our attribute or our label, we've got them in order. So when we come through, we'll be able to just go through and label it sequentially as we would expect to. So, okay to that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go over to this next tab. I'm going to insert the title block. I'll just put it down here. And it's asking us for the entries. If you don't want the entries to display, there's a variable called @rec, ATTREQ, basic attribute request. So when that's turned on, it will bring up that dialog box. When it's turned off, set to 0. When we bring the block in, paste it, there's no prompts for entering the attributes. However, we can double click on the block and we can enter our details. Okay, and as you see, I can sequentially go through because we've changed the attribute order using this manage attributes. The command at the command line is Batman, BATTMAN. So yeah, that's creating blocks. If you want to use this drawing or this title block somewhere else, if you want to write out the blocks that are in this drawing, so we've got tree in here, we've got title block, there's a command called wblock, WBLOCK, and we can come up here and we can write out to file, I'll find title block, and it's going to write a file with the same name as our block to my documents folder. So, okay, and that's created a block of only that single, let's create a file of that single drawing. If I go to documents, and it'll be in here somewhere. I thought that's where I saved it. Let's go in that way. And there's our title block. It's been written out to file. So if I cancel that, I'll grab this and I'll drag it into my Civil 3D just on the title bar up the top here. There we have our file that's been created. When you insert that drawing into another drawing, it will come in with the attributes in position. The block manager, when you click on insert, we'll get this here. So it'll list the drawings in our the blocks in our current drawing. I'll go back to this one here, and you'll see these are all our blocks in this single drawing. We can grab any of them and just drag them into our drawing. Okay. You also have a list of recent blocks. So if the drawing is still available on your system somewhere, you'll be able to bring in blocks from other drawings that have recently been used. So if you recall, the tree was in this drawing here. So it's getting that out of that drawing and bringing it across for us. There's also the libraries button here. Some people don't particularly like the insert. You know, when you go to insert and you get this stuff here, you've still got the old insert which is classic insert, which brings up the old way of inserting a block into your drawing. Same with your classic layer. You've got your old layer manager. With the classic commands, you can't access any of your AutoCAD commands while they're active. Whereas with classic insert, it's the same thing. Whereas if we do insert with the new way of doing it, we can continue working. The newer methods of inserting and working with layers are modeless, whereas if you use the classic versions, they'll be you won't be able to access your AutoCAD drawing until you close those windows. Is there anything that we need to add, Jonathan? Anything that's come through?
Well, yeah, literally, I think probably within 30 seconds of a question coming about classic insert, you actually addressed the question without me having to ask. So, yeah, that was excellent. The fact that you just jumped in and showed that towards the end.
You got classic insert, classic layer, classic group. So if you're using groups are similar to blocks, but with groups, it duplicates all the objects, and your drawing would become bigger and bigger, similar to what we did with the tree initially when you saw the size of the drawing get bigger. Classic X reference is the old way of bringing X reference, and then you got there's a few classic ones in here for those old school ones that don't want to advance or use the modern stuff. It takes a while to get the hang of it, but there's a lot of tools in there.
There's just a couple of things that I've flagged, Selwyn, which I'd just like to raise, if you don't mind. The first one was renaming the block.
Yes.
So go on. Yep.
Yep. Rename works for blocks and any of these sort of things in here. So I've got, if I go to title, hold on, I'll go to the one with the title block in it. Not that one. Office, wasn't it? Rename blocks, and I'll find title block. I can rename that one to Proforma. Click on rename. Okay, and now when I highlight this title block that was called title block before, it's now called Proforma.
That's great. So, yeah, that's one of those bizarre functions which is found completely outside of properties or even the block editor. The fact that if you want to rename a block, it sort of seems to be completely external.
Yeah, rename's really good because you can rename blocks, you can rename layers, although it's easy enough to do the layers in the layer manager. Line types, it's about the only way you can rename a line type in your drawing. And the textiles can be renamed in the textile manager, but blocks, this is about the only place where you can rename your blocks. The only other way is if I highlight my block, I'll bring up the block editor, and over here we've got save block as. So at the moment it's called Proforma. If I come over here, I can do a save block as, and I'll call it another title block. Okay. So if I close, highlight this, it's still called Proforma, but now I have insert, and I should be able to locate another title block and bring that one in. So it's duplicated, it's kept the old file, old Proforma, and it's also created a new block with this new name, another title block.
It doesn't
actually rename, but it'll create another block based on whatever's in the block editor at the time. Go on, Jonathan.
Yeah, so guys, I appreciate we're bingo for time here, but there is a couple of other things I just wanted to mention. But we have just had a question come in regarding what the system variable is to switch from using a dialog box versus entering attribute information on the command line when inserting a block. I was thinking of att-def, but that's actually creating the
yeah,
attribute,
that
isn't it?
defines the attribute.
There is a, is it, I'm trying to remember what it is. So when you insert a block, the command line prompts you for the attribute entries rather than actually. Yeah, someone's mentioned it's file DIA, but that file DIA turns everything down to the command line. So I think just for block attributes, there is a way in which you can set it up so that only the attribute prompts are within the command line. But off the top of my head, I can't think what that is.
I can't think what it is either, because AdRec turns it off completely. Yeah, that's command line.
On the editing. Well, look, just while we're having a look at that, there's a couple of other points. One is regarding the classic insert, and classic insert it could be a good option, particularly for the user that's mentioned this, for those of you that may struggle with the speed of the block palette. So the classic insert is a good option. The second one is, can you dynamically link things like the title drawing to the actual title block? And Selwyn's really sort of loosely sort of discuss that, and that's in relation to fields. So a field, which is what Selwyn is showing here, that's the actual name of the DWG, and that's become an attribute. So rather than assigning a label, he's actually gone and assigned a field here, and you can see there he's actually telling it to show something else. So yes, that's fields, and we haven't actually covered that, and we certainly don't have the time to be covering that in this particular session, but that's how that can be used. And then there's another one here. Can you limit what people enter in the attributes, i.e. length or list of entries?
No.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No, you can't.
No, it's is what it is. Certainly, my experience has been, in fact, Selwyn, if you go to the far left of this title sheet, I've worked in businesses where we've had an attribute for every single cell of that particular table.
Yes.
And you know, revision A, B, C, D, etc. And then you've got this huge list of potential attributes. And the more that you have, the more difficult it can be to manage. The way we've overcome that in the past is to actually have a revision bar block which contains 4 attributes. And each time you insert the block, it's just simply got 4 attributes in the right place, and you can copy that. And rather than having them all embedded into this particular title sheet, but it can become a little bit messy. But certainly the block editor is a good place to go. Just one other thing, so what I wanted to mention was the addition of an attribute after the block has been created, because you will notice, guys, that when you double click on a block, so and I might just get you to double click on the title sheet rather than going block edit, because traditionally when you double click on a block, you're going to get the block editor, but obviously now what you're going to get instead, because you've got attributes, is the attribute editor. So I just wondered if you could just quickly show us how to insert attributes or redefine a block with additional attributes, please.
Okay. You can use block editor or edit block in place. I'll go edit block in place. So you'll see on here, the screen's changed, showing us what was underneath or what's actually entered for the attributes. I'll copy and I'll modify that attribute. I'll just call it other, because I'm not sure what this is going to be. And okay. So I've added an extra attribute. I'll now save changes. Okay, when I come back, that attribute isn't in our list. So now we go back over here, block definition, synchronize, enter, highlight that one. And now we come in and edit, and we've got that additional entry. Does that cover what you're after?
Yeah, that's great. And look, just while we've been talking, Jason on the chat has basically said ATTDIA. It's obviously
at dialogue, yes.
At dialogue, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that old chestnut. So ATTDIA. So I think it was I think it was Ray that asked the question. So if you want the prompt to be going through your command line, ATTDIA, changing that variable. There you go.
There you go. Enter road name, enter change, type plan, revision.
We might just leave it there, Selwyn.
Yep.
Thank you for those of you that have popped in with some really interesting questions. There's probably tons more we could do, but unfortunately we are completely bingo for time. Selwyn, I might just share my screen if that's okay.
Yep, go for it.
Okay, so folks, thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for your participation at the end. It was really, really good. Really good to have some good questions coming in. The webcast will be up on YouTube at some point later on this afternoon, I expect, if not first thing tomorrow. So if you want to go back and review this, you can do so. This is the last webcast of this particular month. Normally we have them running every week, but we're just having a break for 1 week, and then we'll be coming back strong in July, no doubt, with probably, I expect, 4 webcasts, the first one of which will be Stringer Topo, followed by, I expect, Selwyn, we're going to be jumping in with a dynamic blocks webcast.
Certainly. Yes,
it seems to segue nicely from the webcast that we're doing here. So the next one we do, or the next AutoCAD-based webcast, will be in July, probably about the same time, I expect, and that will be on dynamic blocks. If you do have any feedback or suggestions, please visit our webcast webpage here. There will also be an updated schedule of webcasts for July, probably around the first couple of days of that particular month. Other than that, leaves me to say thanks very much, Selwyn. Fantastic webcast.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and everyone who's attended.
Yeah, thanks very much, folks. We look forward to seeing you at the next webcast in July. We hope you all stay well, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Thanks, Selwyn.
Thank you.